Book 2. A few days later, Channing was reading a magazine article. In the article, the writer began to talk about emotionally absent parents and about kids never chosen for playground games. As he read those parts, Channing thought about Marie so strongly that he felt compelled to write her one last note. I'll try not to write again after this. I can mess anything up. Goodbye, Marie. Channing went to sleep early that night, emotionally exhausted. But all that night, he was tossed about in a sea of lucid dreams. One dream faded and another began. In one dream, Marie called him on the phone. They chatted happily and talked about many things. Marie seemed happy. Did you put a curse on me? Every time I turn on the radio, it's either Heart or Fleetwood Mac. Immediately. Every time. I don't speak. The universe speaks. Well, not only do I hear songs that make me think of you, every time I reach for my sunglasses, I think of you. And many other times also, of course. So I have to put a curse on you, that you'll think of me whenever you think of Wuthering Heights, the Moody Blues, People Who Can't Sing, Gallatin, Sun Showers, Guinness, Cat People, of the Moon or otherwise. Dumb Blonde Guys, Jealousy, Buckingham Nicks, the number 23, Mustangs, Twins. Hopefully the list will go on and on. I have something to tell you about back then, but I'm afraid it will hurt your feelings. I don't want my feelings hurt, but you have to tell me. I am Heathcliff. What do you mean? We'll talk about it later. Channing thought about it. If you were Heathcliff, what does that leave? Was I no one at all? Because it's possible that Heathcliff didn't exist, that Catherine made him up to cope with the pain of being so different, of always being in trouble, of having no one to love her. The things that happened to Heathcliff actually happened to her. He would come when they would make her feel so badly and try to bend her. That way she could feel sympathy for someone else. She could defend him and counsel him, and he would love her forever. When she said Heathcliff was more herself than she was, it was because that part of her was dying, and it was the truest part of her. When he was gone, it was because she had fully subdued her true self to fit in. When he came back, it was all too much, and she got sick unto death. He became the absolute worst aspects of her personality, and she was so weak and dreamed of the passion. She could no longer separate dreams from reality. Wow, you deconstructed Heathcliff. The phone call not so much ended as trailed off. The sleeping Channing realized something. Marie hadn't meant that at all. She had meant what she had said. She was Heathcliff. Channing was Catherine. Was that what you were thinking when you said that you were Heathcliff? The thing you wouldn't tell me when you were afraid you'd hurt my feelings, that I was Catherine? Because now I remember you had previously said she was vain. Don't worry about hurting my feelings about that, because I don't agree. I always loved Catherine. For a moment, things blurred before focus was restored. Channing was back in Gallatin with Marie, sitting at the aluminum table. It was raining, and he had moved the table and chairs up to the door of the closed antique shop next door to the little cafe. He was feeling unsober. On the way over, Marie had seen how emotional he was, and she told him that she thought he could use a beer. But he had definitely not needed another beer. Long time came on over the speakers outside the cafe. Channing remembered what Marie had told him earlier about listening to Linda Ronstadt when she was younger. I didn't know you liked Linda Ronstadt. I always loved her. When I was about 12, I got really sad. I listened to Linda Ronstadt for the sadness. That's when I started playing guitar and singing a lot more. Why were you sad? Over boys who were neglectful? For me, it was one girl in particular. When I got to junior high, I just decided to be happy. I always thought you had the prettiest voice. I love to hear you sing. I never knew you liked my voice. I did. Remember how I always asked for you to sing to me? I guess I just thought you wanted to hear those songs. Do you know the story of Echo and Narcissus? Yes, but I can't remember it right now. I always felt like I had to try to sound like someone else. Just like I always felt like I had to try and be like someone else. I felt like I had no voice of my own. You never tried to be like me. Those words remained without response, without dissent, or even an echoed affirmation. Channing didn't follow through on that subject because he thought he knew. But he didn't know. You know, this is really weird, but I remembered something, and now I think I better know how you felt when you read my journal. Sometimes I get upset after I share stuff because, then I'm naked and the other person isn't. And besides, if I don't get feedback, I feel like they're judging me and it's bad. And then I ask myself, why did I put myself in that vulnerable position? Like the mentally raped thing, only I submitted voluntarily, even put it out there and begged for it. Yuck. Yeah, I understood at the time why you were upset, but now I think I totally get it. And that's how I feel sometimes too. Thank you, Marie said. I wanted you to understand. I think I have intimacy issues too. Did you think that about me? Sometimes it seems you hint that you know better. Sometimes it seems that you hint that you know me better than I know myself, in spite of how short a time we have known each other, then or now. I don't think I necessarily thought it was true, but I'm wondering now. Anyway, here's to self-deception, the only kind of deception that works really well for a really long time. Marie laughed. I was thinking of something else when you said you have intimacy issues. Echo. You were fifth grade, second base, playing with the boys. Marie, they neglected you once they left their toys. You were in the shadows, wish that I'd been there. Had a beauty all your own, wish that you had known. I just came to say it didn't fade. Marie, find your beauty and your fate. Someone told you long ago you had no voice of your own. Marie, you believe them. I'm here to say they're wrong. Marie, find your own voice, the beautiful one I'd heard. It's been so long, but it's not been too long. I just came to say it's not too late. Marie, find your own voice and your fate. Marie, find your own voice, the beautiful one I'd heard. It's been so long, but it's not been too long. I just came to say it didn't fade. Marie, find your own voice and your fate. Marie, find your own voice and your fate. Channing Matthews. Channing started telling Marie how he felt about her, and his feelings were running high. You're going too far too fast. We'll have no place left to go. Please, could you go a little slower? I don't mean to be all up in your space. And he meant it. He was sorry, but he could not stop himself. Channing started to talk about the past, which was definitely a place he should not have gone. When you said what you said in your journal, it wasn't like that at all. Tell me what the truth is. I still don't know. I can't reconcile you being Heathcliff with my memory that you didn't care that much about me. Marie just looked at him. Well, someday, journal or no journal, I'd really like you to set me straight. Not on the stuff that likely got you mad, because it's gone already, but on the other stuff, because the truth is important to me. That journal was supposed to be about finding the truth, no matter how many truths there are, no matter how many truths there were, or how blurry. I could even believe I was jealous. Now, I just don't know anymore. Everything is either picture or feeling for me. I can picture you sitting and playing guitar. I can picture us walking, me playing guitar, and you saying that about me being jealous, how I felt, and the look on your face. I can picture myself on the phone in your dorm lobby, and I can feel being sad that you told me you had missed me. I can picture the scene outside the bar after I carried you downtown. I can picture your room and your records, yours and your sis's, you and your sis in your parents' garage and on the beach. I can picture you with me by that jukebox, and I can picture you with the flowers in your hair. I can see, I see a million pictures, and I can feel a million feelings. And I can remember the feeling of trying to please you, if that's the right expression. And I can remember thinking you were so incredibly cute. But I can't recall exactly how I felt about you. And I didn't know how you felt about me, and it's still not, and I still cannot come to any thought about that. Even looking back, which is kind of funny because there are so many other things from my past that I didn't understand then, but writing about them later brought me an understanding I didn't possess at the time. You're so intense. Just let it go. What are you trying to do? You're tearing yourself to pieces. What do you want? I'm sorry, Marie, in every sense of the word. But if I keep telling you sorry and keep doing the same things, you'll not believe me. But I am. I'm sorry I am the way I am. When you said that you thought writing was cathartic for me, I would totally agree. The songs also. But when you said that you thought I wrote some of those things to make myself feel better, it seemed like you meant that I wrote some things I just wanted to believe. If I did, I didn't do it on purpose. I want to know the truth. And if I ever write again, I want it to be the truth also. You're so intense. You're wearing me out, and I'm tired now. I need to go. We're going to end up not even friends. Marie looked dismayed. She got up to leave, and Channing followed her in silence. His heart was breaking because it all hurt so badly. And it was breaking because Marie's was breaking again. And it was breaking because it was his fault. There was nothing Channing could say that wasn't written on his face. Marie looked over at him searchingly as he quietly walked beside her. After a while, she poked him a couple times and she smiled at him. It's okay. As they neared the cars, she asked him, Did you bring the guitar? Yes. Well, go get it. Channing was feeling better. He played some of his songs and they sang together. She remembered the words to his songs, though sometimes he did not. There was something telling in that. Did you ever date anyone who was intense? I wish. I can't believe you called me. I was lonely. Why are you telling me that? I'm lonely too because I don't have anyone else like you. Do you think we're twins? More like polar opposites. But they always come together anyway. But there are so many ways we are just alike, don't you think? Channing paused, and Marie said nothing. I guess you've known people like you before. Yeah, and you want to be special. There was no question in her statement. Yeah. Channing was sad, of course, but what could he do? You can't help how you feel. When I said that I never seem to stop till it hurts, I meant me, but I guess it's really me and everyone around me. I'm kind of coming apart, and as you seem to know, I'm pretty much a mess. I wanted to help you and be good for you, but then I ended up being the one needing to be propped up. I guess you probably changed your mind about what you said about me being like a different person now. Channing walked Marie back to her car. As they stood there, there was a loud crash. That sounded like someone just wrecked. They walked to the corner just in time to see a man heading quickly away from a glass door he had just totally demolished. Marie said that Channing should drive her back to her car. Marie said Channing should drive her back to her car. He got in and drove the short blocks. Could I have a hug? Marie reached over. As he hugged her, she kissed his cheek so sweetly. Marie wanted it would seem to dry the tears in his heart. Channing did not hear from Marie in the days that followed. He thought again and again about her and the things she had said to him in Gallatin. And he thought, don't call me. Okay, don't call me all weak. I'll miss you badly, but we'll still be friends. Somehow in the dream, the film seemed to skip. It was sometime later, and Channing was standing very close to Marie on a sidewalk somewhere. It seemed to be foggy, but there didn't seem to be anything at all past Marie anyway. You come to me as a love, but tell me, in not so many words, that you have no room in your life for another love. Well, I have no room in my life for another crazy person. Besides, I have enough trouble of my own. I don't want to borrow you. You say I'm your twin, but how long will you be able to keep this up? Really? You want to do this? An emotional affair? Yes. Oh my gosh, you're right. I would never do that. I love my wife too much to cheat her out of what is rightfully hers. Could we be this close were you a boy? No, I wonder. So how could a married person have a friend closer than a brother? Is a twin of the opposite sex separated at birth, yin to your yang? Is that the closest you can be in this life? If so, why would it sometimes be forbidden? If you broke a magnet in two, you would have two opposites, made of the exact same material. I've always felt that half of me was missing. Marie said, life is sad. I'm over it. But too, he thought, hadn't he led her on, even as he had told himself he would not go there, and even if she had given no indication that she had any feelings for him anyway? Channing felt sure that he would not see Marie again in this life, but he continued to dream about her. Beautiful disaster. Cuter than a puppy in a little red wagon, pretty and pink and blue, and I'm free. Gorgeous was something I just wanted to be. Bad's about as good as I'll ever be. I can't change, oh why can't you see the beautiful disaster when you're looking at me? If you were Heathcliff, what would that leave? Maybe that's the matter with me. Crisscrossing contrails over the sea in the waning light of what wouldn't be. It don't matter to me anymore. My heart don't know what it's there for. Just a beautiful disaster trying to make sure. Cuter than a puppy in a little red wagon, pretty and pink and blue, and I'm free. Gorgeous was something I just wanted to be. Channing Matthews. As sometimes happens in dreams, some of them would shift to another dream in some magical way that could not possibly make sense in waking hours. One night in the middle of the night, Channing had to pee. He rubbed his eyes and looked up at the stars and climbed out of his bag. He saw that he had been camping with friends. There were several sleeping bags a few feet away. Channing grabbed his jeans and put them on, standing up, and then slipped into his simples. Walking toward the water, he was still in a dreamlike state. He couldn't remember who he was there with or why they had come. He realized they were near Cape Fear, but that was about it. He peed into the gentle surf and watched the stars flicker over the water. Channing felt like there was someone there. Not the people sleeping back up the bank, but someone else. Someone conscious. Someone conscious of him. Maybe it wasn't a person, but there was something. Not only that, Channing was aware of where it was, even though it was behind him. Slowly, he zipped up and turned around, keeping his eyes fixed on the coastline as he started walking up the beach, but also veering up the bank. Out of the corner of his eye, he peered toward it. The moon began to peek out from behind a pale cloud. Channing realized that it was still 100 yards away. It was not a person, but it It wasn't a dog or a fox or a cat or a coyote. It was much larger and shone in the growing moonlight. When Channing was 50 yards away, he altered his course, now going strictly up the beach. It was perhaps 50 feet into the tall grass, and while he could feel all the hair on his neck, even the hair on his head tingled. He didn't want to spook it. It was a magnificent white Mustang, and it was watching him warily. Channing instantly knew she was alone. This was a solitary horse. A lone Mustang. For a brief moment, the image of Marie flashed through his mind. Marie from long ago. When Channing was 20 yards down coast from her, and still 20 yards towards the water, the horse began to walk away slowly. For several miles, the horse maintained a gait that was somewhat comfortable for him to keep pace with. It was nearing daybreak. Channing stopped for a moment. He could see the first glimmers of sunrise on the still sea. When he glanced back up the coast, she was gone. Channing walked up the slope into the tall grasses. He fastened his jacket to an old, lonely, and useless fence post. The original barbed wire was still attached to both sides, but was futilely buried in the sand. It was no more than picturesque now, but it would serve Jesse's purpose. He turned and headed back the way he had come. He would return that night. His friends told him it was a nice story, but they didn't feel what Channing felt. Channing was drawn to this horse, not just because it was a wild Mustang, not just because it was a lone Mustang. He felt a kinship. More than that, Channing felt that this horse was somehow yin to his yang, like a twin separated at birth, the girl he knew in the womb and had missed all his life. Though he had not remembered her, he just remembered there was something he had lost. Channing stayed with his friends that day, but made it clear that he would not accompany them back to town. He would find his own way back. He took his pack and folded his sleeping bag and headed back up the beach as the evening faded. He found the forlorn post, retrieved the jacket, and looked for a place to put his stuff. He walked back to the sand and sat down. He sat there for some time on the beach, looking out to sea and not up the bank toward the western horizon. He began to grow tired, and there was no point in staying up. The Mustang would not return till the third watch. Channing was sure of that, but he was also confident that the Mustang would appear sometime that night. He had meant to wake up around 2, just to be sure he wouldn't miss her. But sometime around midnight, he found himself in that land between sleep and wake. He saw the horse. It was magnificent. The moonlight was much brighter, almost blinding when he stared straight at the horse, up at the helm of the bank. The horse bolted, and Channing sat upright with his eyes still closed. Gradually he made sense of the ensuing blackness and opened his eyes. She was there. How long had she been there? He had no way of knowing. And this time he could not sense her location. He looked all around. She must be in shadow, he thought. The moon was not near as bright as it had been in his dream. Channing stood up and stretched slowly and quietly, not because she didn't see him, but because she did see him, as if to say, I won't do anything sudden. Channing had caught a wild horse once. He had been looking for horses in New Mexico with an old Navajo. 2 days east of Albuquerque, they found a group of Palominos, 4 of them traveling together. They spent a morning waiting for an opportunity to cut the horses off with the old Jeep. Finally, the opportunity came, and Channing jumped out the missing passenger door, the vehicle still moving. He rolled to break his fall and came up right in front of a young white and russet mare, and somehow managed to rope her. For the next 3 days, with the old man's help, he worked to break her. After parting ways with his guide, Channing stayed out there in the sage country and rode the horse all that autumn, then let her go when the sage and aspen grew bright yellow. But this was no Palomino. This lone Mustang had a heart like Channing's, and he casually relinquished any thoughts of catching her. No one would ride this girl. She was too wild and free even to stay bound to her own kind. Channing quickly dressed and took a last look at the water before searching again. But as he turned back toward the land, there she was, right on the beach, just 100 yards up the shore. His first instinct was to head toward her, but he didn't want to leave his bag and pack this time. He quickly rolled and attached the sleeping bag and nonchalantly strapped on the pack and started walking up the coast, careful to stay on the bank. This time she began to gallop, staying on the hardened part of the sand just exposed by the receding tide. Channing began to run. The pack was awkward, and after 5 minutes he pulled off the sleeping bag and let it fall on the wet sand, knowing it would be swept out with the next tide. He tied his jacket around his waist and continued as fast as he could for what must have been hours. They were now far from Cape Fear in a much more remote part of the Outer Banks. Ahead was the end of this part of the land. The Mustang slowed, and Channing thought he was in luck. She could have turned around. She could have turned inland. She could have headed inland. As it was, she walked straight into the surf. Channing understood then how these magnificent animals were able to remain free for 300 years. They knew these islands, like the wind coming off the ocean. Where they came from and where they went, no one knew. Channing was determined to follow, but the price was that everything he had would be soaking wet, even his shoes and pack, lighter, food, everything. As he pondered this, the Mustang stopped momentarily. Channing was still 50 yards from the water. The Mustang was in water up to the bottom of her body. Waves took it to her shoulders. She looked back at him and held his gaze. When she saw that he saw her eyes, she turned and looked up the far bank. A rowboat with a single oar sat on high ground. It seemed too good to be true. Certainly it was full of holes and not at all seaworthy, not even bathtub-worthy. Channing paused only a minute before running up the dune. It looked okay, not a single hole that he could see. Perhaps there was some space that represented leakage, but it might make it. Channing thought he could see land in the direction she was heading, perhaps 2.5 miles away. He threw the oar in the boat along with his pack and began pulling it down the other side of the dune. When he got to the water, the horse was gone. He thought he saw her white head maybe 3/4 of a mile out, but he wasn't really sure. It could have just been foam, and he didn't want to spend too much time looking. Channing pulled off his shoes and his socks, throwing them into the boat. He pushed it into the water and scampered aboard from the back, barely keeping his balance. He began to row with the one paddle, one side and then the other, as fast as he could. The dark sea was calm and beautiful, and the white tips of the waves sparkled in the moonlight. Channing felt something that brought to mind memories of long ago. There was a sweet sorrow, and yet it was tinged with something like the feeling of young love. Sure enough, the little boat was taking on water. He put his stuff on the other seat and tried to row harder. He was exhausted, but his adrenaline was flowing. When the water reached 8 inches, he saw the land and the horse. Channing figured he was midway and the boat would stay afloat. With another couple of inches of water in the bottom, he began to scoop the water out with his hands till he bailed a few inches out. He resumed rowing. A few 100 feet from shore, he had to repeat the exercise as there was now close to a foot of water in the boat. The horse was now nowhere to be seen, but Channing would land the boat in a couple of minutes and could worry about her then. He climbed out and considered his situation. The boat would have to be bailed out quite a bit before it would be light enough for him to capsize it and put it ashore, and the sun was once again coloring the horizon. The horse would likely stay in the vicinity, out of his view and beyond his ability to find her. Channing took care of the boat and his stuff and explored the desolate island. He was not surprised when he found that the horse's tracks simply disappeared on one of the dunes. Channing had been out of fresh water since before he found the little dinghy. He headed toward the nearest shade and pondered this new predicament. He might have to return. He had no idea where there might be fresh water on this island. He could tell no one lived here, and that it might take him a while to find anything. It had not rained in days. Just as he was becoming discouraged, he heard the horse call. The entire time he had chased the Mustang, he had not once heard her. It sounded like she was just over a nearby hill, a little bit up from where he was sitting. Channing left his pack and ran toward the sound. He meant only to go as far as the top of the rise, unless he saw her or heard her again, but he kept going in that general direction. This barrier island was deceptive. The further he went, the wider it became. Again, there was another rise ahead, and this one seemed to have great trees on the downward slope. On he continued at a rather brisk pace. Winded, he breached the small hill and headed toward the densest area of trees. Channing entered the beautiful little grove. It was deeper than it had first appeared, and the light began to fail as the trees grew thicker and taller. After some time, Channing came to a small creek. Beautiful, he thought. The water was sweet and clear, but he'd have to go back for his stuff. He could go back and get his jug, fill it, and return to the spot where he had landed. But there was no point in having to make two trips, and besides, it seemed the horse had led him to this spot. He would spend the night there. Again, that night, the Mustang would appear, and again Channing followed the horse. By now it was clear that the Mustang wanted to be chased, but did not want to be caught. Channing felt the horse was twin to his soul. They were kindred spirits, part of the same whole. He wondered if the Mustang felt this too, and he wished that she did. After several more days and nights, Channing was sunburned badly and exhausted. He had lost a lot of weight, and he was becoming confused. Who had he been with? Why had they come? Why was he following this horse? Where was he supposed to be, and how many days had he been out here? He remembered crossing water several times, but he could not remember how. In a lucid moment, he decided he must stop, were he ever to remember the other things again. And in the instant of that decision, Jesse felt a sadness like no sadness he had ever felt before. The melancholy he had held so dear was just a prelude to this feeling, and strangely, he thought again of Marie. He thought how he had tried to capture her soul in his writing, how she told him she felt upon reading his journal that she had been verbally raped. He would not try and break this horse. Not that he would have been able. He had known that a long while back. Channing felt the need to tell himself that he would come back one day. I'll be better prepared next time, he thought. He would see her only from a distance, perhaps, but he felt he would find her again, or she him. Their souls were as the tide, their souls were as the two sides of a broken magnet, made of the exact same material, but one was north and the other south, and they would always be able to find each other, guided by an unseen force. Channing would capture her only in photograph, if she would allow even that. Could he capture her spirit, then, a treasure he could gaze at his old age? She'd captured his in memory, as she had also captured his resistance. Would she remember him? Would she see some fool at a distance and remember? Cape Fear, Lone Mustang. Like that Palomino, 2 days east of Albuquerque, I tried to break you. You alone, a Mustang, in the tall grass near Cape Fear, but I never knew you. Like the wind coming off the ocean, you've come a long way to reach these barrier islands, and no one will ever ride you. I followed you long as I could, and I alone as you, with the sand in my eyes and my skin turning red, till I turned around confused, sure where I've been led. Like the wind coming off the ocean, no one knows where you come from or where you go, and no one will ever ride you. I think at times to go back to see you from a distance, and capture your soul in photograph as you captured my resistance, and I would that for a moment you'd remember me. Like the wind coming off the ocean, No one knows how memory comes, or where at last it goes, or how perchance it guides you. Like the wind coming off the ocean, no one knows where you come from, or where at last you go, and no one will ever ride you. Like the wind coming off the ocean, no one will ever ride you. No one will ever ride you. Channing Matthews. Channing awoke the next day, sad but puzzled. And so again, Channing woke and wondered, but again, a fool. He knew nothing. Marie always seemed to have a high opinion of him, which he desperately needed, till he blew it. Channing awoke the next day, sad but puzzled. And so again, Channing woke and wondered, but again, a fool. He knew nothing. Marie always seemed to have a high opinion of him, which he desperately needed, till he blew it. And she liked his music. At least he thought she did. Marie complimented his personality and his talents, and he felt like he had something to give her. And he felt like she would give him attention. Attention he so desperately needed, always. Channing felt like maybe Marie was the missing part of him, that she was yin to his yang. Ultimately, he did think they were twins. They could have been so close. 2 days later, he was shocked to get a note back. Marie said she appreciated his trying, but that she had quit looking for someone. It was all too much striving and not arriving. She was tired of never being enough. He told her how grateful he was and sent her his thoughts about trying again to make music. Together. He sent her several notes that day and tried to call her that night. Again, she didn't answer. Channing never heard back from Marie. He wrote her once more that it wasn't fair for him to ask her to take me there. He told her that when he built his house, he'd call her. Channing intended to never bother her again. His neediness had become a great burden, a weight she should not have to bear. It's bad enough to ask someone else to validate you. So much the worse when it goes past that and you look to someone else to save you. And he the worse, as he had a wonderful wife and he had a savior. A twin would have been so beautiful, but boundaries must be minded. Channing's journal. I lay in bed last night wondering what it all means and what is wrong with me. No personality disorder I can find seems to cover it quite right. Not ADD, not ODD, not passive aggressive, not bipolar, not histrionic personality disorder. Do I have all these conditions? So, poor Jesse. Or is it demons? Or am I just a bad person? Thinking of that possibility makes me feel so bad, and I get that old familiar feeling in my chest. Marie told me once that I needed to find my essence. I asked her, what if my essence is bad? She said, your essence cannot be bad. It just is. I talked about the truly evil in the world, and then I asked her again, but if your essence was bad, would you want to find it? No, I guess not. I tossed and turned most of the night wondering, too, if Marie felt the same about me, and I wondered again how she had felt back then. I could come to no conclusions. A lot seemed to focus on the last time I went to visit her at her parents' house. Had she been through with me? Had she wanted to move on? Or did I misunderstand and give up on her? Narcissus leaving her as echo again. I finally fell asleep and found Marie again in restless dreams. We were in her dorm. Then we were somewhere outside, and finally we were in her dorm room surrounded by bottles and cases of alcohol that she was saving for what I did not know. Between us, it seemed the same as it had always felt back then. We came no closer, it seemed, till at last I left her and found myself alone. I received a telegram from Marie. She was far away. The writing was bad, but I could read it. She had much to say, but one thing stood out above all else. I love your smile and your eyes, and I do love you too. Her love had always been enough. That's all there was to say about it. Your love is enough. I was crying and typing, telling you goodbye when I wanted you to stay. Unconditional love, or so it seems, I have to let you go if you're weaker with me. I cried so hard and I cried so long, everything was blurry the whole ride home. I've been looking for you to validate me and to prop me up, and so I sapped your energy when your love was enough. What's wrong with me will always be wrong with me, but I won't again expect you to save me. Your love is enough. Your love is enough. I lay in bed half the night, tossing and turning, wondering what it all means and what is wrong with me. I kept trying to figure out if you liked me, and did you like me then? How was that final visit really meant to end? Were you through with me, or did I give up on you when your love was enough? I finally fell asleep and found you again in restless dreams, different places, but mostly just the way it seemed, till at last I was alone and received a telegraph from you. The writing was bad, but I could read it. I love your smile and your eyes, and I do love you too, and love is enough. What's wrong with me will always be wrong with me, but I won't again expect you to save me. Your love is enough. Your love is enough. Channing Matthews. When I build my house, I will call Marie. That's what she had asked me before, but I did not understand. I should be ready with my songs. I must rebuild my faith, and my marriage should be strong. Then I'll have something to give her, and then she can be my twin, and then we can play music together.